Welcome.
Welcome.
The Art of Spiritual Development.
Our new season.
3. Yes, we're excited to start with episode 1 today. You're listening to Magenta FM, Season 3, The Art of Spiritual Development.
In this season, you'll learn about the spiritual forces at play within us, within our world, and in the spaces between us.
These spiritual realities aren't often discussed, but it's time to learn about them, both the dark and the light.
We present these topics not through a theological, religious, or New Age lens, but through a grounded and pragmatic approach that you can explore with your own experience and common sense.
We'll share tools and ideas for developing more freedom and agency in your life, so click subscribe and don't miss an episode.
This is so exciting.
This is exciting. We want to start by sharing a little bit about what we have in store for you this season and why you should listen.
Yep. Yeah. Now, we sort of beat around the bush. We weren't really sure if we were going to name it this, but we've had to name it this because each season, like this is our third season, we have the first season, Art of Relationships, which is a great place to start, but it really wasn't revealing our
theories practices,
and ideas, and the way we prioritize certain things. And then we started getting into what's behind it in the second season, Art of Mental Health. But this season, we're really getting into, okay, what is behind both of those seasons?
Yes.
What really lies underneath? What are the truths that are there?
So we want to explore this in a way that is very practical and pragmatic, and that we think through ourselves. We bring our own lived experiences. We bring our own logic to these ideas around the spiritual realities. So this is how Louisa and I have come to this work. We're very practical and intelligent people. And this is how we want to present the information to you also. So it's not coming from a, theological or New Age or philosophical
or
approach.
Religious. Yeah.
That we can learn to experience, decipher the spiritual nature of ourselves and the world through a very grounded experience.
We really are huge proponents of good old common sense. Mm-hmm. But common sense in itself, common sense that's guided by logic, not by sympathy or antipathy, right? By a very sort of gut reaction or reactionary approach to life. We've got to be able to think things through with our logic, especially when it comes to issues of a spiritual nature. Our common sense is a very, very important tool because what spiritual development is all about is the truth. So, some of the other topics that we really want to cover in this season, we want to talk about archetypes like truth, but also archetypes like beauty. Like, what does beauty have to do with getting through life these days? Is it a good to have? Is it a nice to have? Or is it essential? And then also goodness. Mm-hmm. What is goodness, as opposed to evilness?
Yeah. We want to dive into the mystery of the moral universe.
Yes.
That's
and
another
how
big question.
Essential this is. Yeah. And reckoning with evil and egotism. What does this look like? And again, of course, always in this pragmatic sense. Why should you care? Like, why should you listen? Well, we're going to show you why. We're going to show you how a deeper understanding and knowledge of the nature and the archetype of evil will help you in your day-to-day life. This is our goal.
And help our world.
Yes.
We also want to talk about meditation, about the original esoteric purposes of meditation and how meditation was and can be used to strengthen soul capacities.
Yeah, and how to use meditation and other practices as the place of, the studio, the practice room for where we grow the strengths and capacities we need to meet life more fully and with greater and more elevated presence.
Mm-hmm. All of these subjects discussing the spiritual realities, exploring the spiritual realities that lie behind our physical world.
The living spiritual realities. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And all of these have major implications. They're not just thought exercises. They're not just abstract ideas to ponder. They have very real implications for ourselves and thus for our world. So we really want people to tune in and listen, because we want you to have agency. We want you to take the reins back in your life and see that you have more power than you thought you had.
Yes.
And having this orientation of the spiritual world and the spiritual nature of ourselves and our world will help you do that.
Yes. And we're all about that, because your freedom, that's what we live and breathe, is to help you, listener, to become more free.
Yes.
That's what we mean by taking back your agency. And there's a lot of responsibility that can come with greater freedom, but that responsibility leads us toward love and compassion and giving, and the world needs a lot more of that,
Yeah.
you know.
So today we're going to dive right into these implications, talking about why spiritual development is essential to deepening into our purpose. And this is so relevant because so many people are struggling to find meaning in their life or their work, or feeling like a longing for a sense of purpose that they may not know how to find or achieve. And people may not be looking to spiritual development as the answer to that question.
That's right. And we're going to take it further into a popular topic of today, which is manifesting. So we have quite a different take on manifesting, but it's definitely important in the context of purpose and meaning.
Yes. So first we're going to talk about a little bit about healing, because connecting to our purpose requires that we get out of our own way, which is
definitely
all of
healing.
Our, stuff that is clouds everything and can, keep us in bed or at home and afraid instead of out there doing our good work. Then we're going to get more into how our inner world shapes our outer world. And what do we mean by that? And how can we observe that? How can you start to work with this idea in your own life? And then finally, we're going to get into the meat of it with manifesting our destiny. How do we do that in healthy ways? And is this just a, new age tactic for just saying a mantra every day and
becoming wealthy?
Yeah. No. So let's start with healing.
Yeah. So, when we talk about healing, we're talking about inner development, which is, commonly like therapy or personal growth. And what we're maintaining, as we said earlier, is that inner development is spiritual development. And there's lots of reasons why we say that. And we will, talk about all of them over the season. But just to start with, it's because we're really working with the soul. When you're doing therapy, when you're working on psychic pain, depression, anxiety, all of the ways that suffering and pain manifests itself, this is in this invisible but nevertheless very real realm of our soul. And the soul is like the mediator. It's the praxis. It's the crucible between the spiritual realities of the world and the physical realities of the world. And the soul itself, you could say, is made up anatomically of thinking and feeling and willing. And if you're, veterans of our podcast, you've heard us say this over and over again. But this is just a real quick summary. So this is what we're doing when we're working on our healing. We're working in these three realms, and typically all at the same time. But gradually, as we get more and more masterful, we actually are able to work on them much more separately. And this is the same thing that happens when you're playing an instrument. You have to separate out all the technical pieces and reduce them to their most single element and work on them individually. And then when they come back together again, it's totally different experience.
Yeah. So this has big implications for our purpose, because our thinking is involved in our beliefs and our assumptions. Our feelings can either be generative and motivating, or they can be soul-crushing and feelings of despair or unworthiness. These addictive feelings that can really limit people in their, motivation, or in their clarity, or their drive to do their work in the world.
Yeah. It's interesting because we think we believe something and we just believe it. We don't realize that we feel it, therefore we believe it. So if we feel despair, therefore we believe we have things to be despairing about. And they are self-reinforcing. I mean, it's hard to say which comes first, the conclusion or the feeling about the conclusion. But this is all the terrain that you have to learn to differentiate between what you believe, what you feel about what you believe, and what are your strategies and behaviors, what you will about what you feel and believe. So this whole terrain, this is Magenta's world. This is where we surf, and all of our tools, all of our methodologies are geared around helping you get agency in what you think, so that you can become more free there. And how you work with your feeling life, getting to know it, and then having more agency there. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you didn't have to feel depressed anymore? And that's my personal, it's been my path, and I'm here to say it's possible, but then also to be master of your will, so that you can do things and you're not held back by apathy or procrastination or indecision. Indecision is a big reason why beautiful initiatives in this world fail, because of indecisiveness. Isn't that interesting? There's some research that was done up in Canada about this.
Interesting. So a lot of this soul work we also describe as healing the shadow, healing these subconscious parts of ourselves that are habitual, that take hold of us,
that we're not aware of.
Right. But then on the other side, we need to do the work of strengthening our light.
And so when Rachel and I are talking about you are not just a broken, weak, hurting, whatever, however you see yourself, you're not just that. You're also something far more, I wouldn't say powerful in a sort of conventional sense, but immortal. Something that lies in potential, that is there in existence, but you need to strengthen your ability to connect to. And the more you can connect to it, the more you are connected to that part of you that has the ability, the power to heal. And this is so much about what is missing in our world, is that we don't realize what heals in us. And it's been a long road for me to come to understand this. It's almost like I'm on the simplicity on the other side of complexity. Like I've finally arrived at the point where I can say, really, it's consciousness that heals. And this is hard to this is hard to like admit. Maybe that's the way to put it, because a lot of people don't see that. They're like, no, the physical body, you have to heal the physical body. But I'm saying it's the consciousness that heals the physical body. It's consciousness that is going to heal society. It's so when you bring your consciousness to bear in this light-filled way, where you are not, and I don't mean your intellect consciousness. Intellect is just one part of your consciousness, but I mean this part of you that is in activity. Intellect is like a capacity, but the higher self, or the activity of the I, that you can bring that to bear. Most people are living in a constant state of fear, anxiety, and stress. So many are struggling with the pain of depression, or with life not going the way they want it to. And all of this leads to a lack of presence of mind and heart. We doubt our worthiness, we second guess our decisions, and we struggle with negative thoughts and beliefs.
But did you know that meditation is actually the perfect place to address these challenging issues? However, most meditation techniques being taught today are merely focused on stress reduction or changing brain states and are not suited to personal healing and spiritual transformation.
It's time to learn how to meditate in a way that gives you a healthy foundation in the intangible but very real world of the soul. Meditation helps you to heal, feel more grounded, find peace of mind, and ultimately build an authentic and elevated presence.
The kind of presence where you feel more in charge of your inner experiences of joy and connection. You can elevate your interactions with others merely through the quality of your presence, and the world begins to meet you in a whole new way.
Magenta's Elevated Presence Masterclass will take you on a 21-day journey into the magic of a daily practice designed to rhythmically nourish you. Like the monastic training methods of old, we immerse you in what it actually takes to evolve.
We do this by tapping into unconventional techniques derived from thousands of years of Western esoteric spiritual insight and practice. We've taken those techniques and boiled them down to just 15 minutes a day so that even the busiest person can participate.
In the Elevated Presence Masterclass, we lay the groundwork for a lifetime of transformative and sustainable practice. Go to magenta.fm/elevated presence to learn more. So the first controversial thing I said is that consciousness is the force in the world that heals. And the second controversial statement I'm going to make is that our inner world is what shapes our outer world. Mm-hmm. And the reason being because of the nature of our consciousness. To what you attend, that is what's going to grow. Mm-hmm. That's how powerful your attention is. And this is not, terribly controversial actually, because a lot of people know, especially those who are really interested in manifesting.
Yeah. Energy flows where attention goes.
Yeah, there you go.
That was a saying of one of my yoga teachers.
Yeah.
When talking about the physical body, but it applies, it all scales.
Yes. Yeah, and so...
But let's really break that down. I mean, it's a nice, pithy saying, and it's helpful when you're in a yoga pose and you need to bring some attention to...
your hip.
Yes, exactly, and get some flow happening there. But what about when it comes to the medium of your life? Not your physical body, but something larger and more complex. How it can seem like the life is just happening to us. So how could it be so that our inner world is actually shaping our outer world when we believe that no one can see into our inner world?
Oh, but they can. I'm just kidding. They can't really. Yeah. So the dilemma is when we move through our lives and we move through the world, 99% of our attention is focused outward. Mm-hmm. There is so much that is noisy and demanding about our outer life that, you wake up in the morning, like let's say you wake up out of a dream state and you immediately wake up, you have this memory of the dream and the dream felt very real at the time. But as soon as you are fully in your body and you're fully awake, the dream is just like you've almost forgotten it. It's just wispy and not really... It doesn't have the same impression on you because the outer world is so damn noisy that it's just, it sucks all of your attention. There's the taxes, there's the damn bills, which are looming over you. And there's a lot of stress, about these things.
There's children, there's making the meals.
Yeah, there's relentlessness of these responsibilities. And so this is how we move through life in a natural way. But the work of inner development is that we begin to nourish and prioritize our inner life, the realm of thinking, feeling, and the source of the will, the source of our motives. And when we do that, when we start to pay attention to what's going on in there, we start to realize that we are attending to things that we didn't actually know we were attending to. Now, remember what we said, what you attend to grows. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, if you are not interrogating your inner life, you might find, to your surprise, that you are attending to thoughts and beliefs around despair. thoughts and beliefs that are leading you to despair, or to a state of anxiety, or to a state of drawing conclusions about the way the world is, and you have to move within this narrow constraint of your beliefs.
Yeah.
And as you begin to interrogate this, you realize just how imprisoned you actually are by what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and your motives, so long as they remain unexamined.
Yeah. So all of the opportunities that you miss, the gestures that you misinterpret.
Right.
If you're holding a belief around distrust of other people, like everyone's out for their own, we can't really trust other people, then you're going to meet the world in a way in which this protective wall that you're putting up to protect yourself from others actually prevents others from meeting you and meeting your needs and collaborating with you or serving you,
Which just reinforces your beliefs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's just one example.
That's one example. And another example is fear. If you move through the world and you're fearful, maybe you have to protect your heart because you're afraid of being betrayed. What you would decide is a betrayal.
Yeah.
And so you don't engage in with others or in relationships, or you don't take risks because you're just too afraid, right?
Yeah, like maybe a sense of unworthiness, that your opinion or your thoughts or your ideas matter. And so you withhold them, and then life goes on and decisions are made, and your thoughts, your hopes, your dreams are omitted from the whole picture.
Yeah.
And
because no one knew.
Yeah. And then, again, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy that the belief that your ideas don't matter are reinforced because they weren't considered by everybody else because you didn't share them.
So what you believe is what you see.
Yes.
It's not the other way around. And so these are the ways in which to what we attend grows, which of course includes a lot of negative and difficult outcomes for us.
Yeah.
But attention is the gold currency of the spiritual worlds, you could say. Attention is what everybody wants from you. And so if there are addictions in you, addictions around things that you believe about the way the world works, or about yourself and your own worthiness or lack thereof, or the things that you feel, when there are addictions around these things, those things are getting your attention, and they are nourished by your attention, and they grow in strength. Also what you desire. So for instance, if you have desires of which you're not really aware, like you desire to escape because you don't really want to have to face certain things. So there's this so you can grow desire for certain things like gaming and reading a lot of fantasy books. That's something I did as a teenager. I read so many. It gave me a great vocabulary, but it was such a big escape for me because high school was miserable. I don't know, was it miserable for you?
Oh yeah, that's an understatement.
So for me, that was did you have escape routes?
I did. Yeah. What were some of them? I escaped into isolation and working out. That was another thing.
Working out?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Being by myself, distrusting, and getting really physically strong because it made me...
You felt powerful.
Yeah, I felt powerful in a situation in which I was very powerless.
Right.
And so that, is a picture of how our beliefs of, being powerless or our wounds can lead us into some habitual ways of being. I mean, working out for me was actually probably really healthy thing to do given the circumstances that I was under.
Right.
But I could also have gone the direction of other forms of power, like attaining wealth. Those things go hand in hand a lot because I'm still into working out. Well, not as much these days since I have little kids, but I still follow all those people that I used to when I was like really into CrossFit and, you know, being strong.
Right.
And there's a lot of, you know, wealth and physical strength. You know, those are a lot of the people are sharing ideas around both of these attributes. Can be a good thing to be able to provide for your family. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, you know, have a roof over our head or be able to, you know, feed our family and pay our bills. There's nothing wrong with that.
Safety.
But if we're compensating for some other wound,
right, then we're not free.
And then that can lead us into greed and self-interest and power and other forms of egotism.
Yeah. So this really brings us into the immediate implications of taking back our agency in our attention and beginning to realize just how important our consciousness is when it comes to not only healing but also development, and that is the importance of a moral compass. Now, I think this is the kind of thing that might seem obvious to a lot of people, but you don't hear people speaking directly to this issue. And it's a very, very big issue because you cannot talk about spiritual development. I don't care what spiritual path you're on. You should not be talking about spiritual development without talking about moral compass, moral development. In a way, the most important thing on any spiritual path, you should take 3 steps of moral development for every step of spiritual inner healing development. It's the most important thing. And the reason why it's important is because now I'm going to say something that I even have trouble believing is if there wasn't so much evidence of it in the world. But that is that the world is actually a moral world. When you look at nature and you look at the phi ratio and you see the incredible order and harmony and structure that is in the natural world, it's the incredible harmony and order is everywhere. You just have to look at the complexity of a flower. And then you look at the relationship between the bee and the flower, or you look at a tree and the phi ratio that is repeated 1,000,000 times, you know, not only in the branches and the leaves, but also in the flowers. And then, you know, the whole thing has a harmonic structure that is enormously complex, but profoundly structured and wise. One of the goals of inner spiritual development is internal structure. So if you are internally chaotic, you are internally dysregulated. And we all know that that's not a good thing. And the more regulated you become, especially the more self-regulated you become capable of being, the more structured you are. And the more structured you are, the more clear your thinking is, the more steady your emotional life is, and the more present and grounded you are in the world.
Yeah. Well, and you can experience it yourself when you're doing this development work, when you're getting a handle on your habitual ways of thinking, and you can experience your own inner compass when you have done enough work to be able to connect to the witness part of yourself, your higher self. It's automatic. It just drops in. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Well, I wouldn't call it automatic, only because the work of motive, the work that where you make decisions and you move and you operate out of a place of moral integrity, you're free there. And it's harder to act out of freedom than it is to act out of compulsion, right? Because the compulsion wants to pull you in, and you have to fight that, and you have to say, I'm going to take the higher road.
Yeah, so I guess when you can experience yourself being free of compulsion, then it is moral. Like
Right. That's the bottom line. Because so this inner work, the spiritual development, is when you clean yourself of projection. When your motives are transparent to you.
Yeah.
You know why you're doing what you're doing. You know why you desire what you desire, and it is in accordance with the lawfulness of the universe. And when you are moving through the world with a cleansed motive, when you have cleaned the lens through which you assess and judge the world, when you are no longer projecting onto others or the world, then you and you're free of those things. The freer you are of those things, what happens is the world starts to speak to you, and you can start to you can hear the lawfulness of nature and the world speaking to you about its phenomena and its reality. And the more you are moving with the lawfulness and beauty and goodness and truth of the world, and I'm not just talking about nature, I'm also talking about spiritual, this invisible, spiritual, intangible realm of consciousness, and the beings that live and exist outside of our knowledge and understanding and able to see, right? That lie behind the manifest world. When you are working in harmony with that, with the moral integrity of these realities, then manifestation becomes a whole other game. You start to realize that that there are consequences for certain thoughts that you think. There are consequences for allowing certain non-cognitive style feelings to continue to persist in you. There are consequences for allowing yourself to do certain behaviors that are not good for you or other people, right? That lying, about stuff has consequences for you, because what happens is when you allow not so great things to continue to exist in you that you attend to, it shuts down certain sensitivities in you that start to grow in you if you are really striving to live your life with more moral integrity. These new organs of perception start to awaken in you that really do live or die by what we think, how we feel, and what we do, the consequences. And so so the implications of moving through the world with moral integrity is that you can grow these organs of perception that can start to see into what I was sort of talking about earlier about the lawfulness of the world, but also the lawfulness that exists between us, like in the social realm. When you are focused on building that, then you start to become more and more sensitive in that realm of things, and you start to notice things that you couldn't see before. Not only do you start to see the consequences of your laziness or your lying or your whatever it is that is not so good things that you did or thought, but you also you become more aware of things like opportunities.
You can experience your intuition because it's like, oh, I had a gut feeling about this.
Yeah.
But if your gut feeling is being clouded by your
projection
or your desire for, wealth, which is really covering up your, belief that you don't matter or that you're powerless,
right?
Then, your gut feeling, which really is wanting to lead you toward your destiny, wanting to lead you to opportunities, is completely absent.
Right.
Your intuition comes about from your feeling life, but if your feelings are just in a habit way of operating, the habit of wanting to feel in charge and powerful, but really that's just a habitual way to cover up some other feeling or, of shame.
Basically. The reason why we're talking about moral compass is because when we think about manifesting, in the spiritual context, we don't really talk about the moral consequences or moral implications of what it is that we desire to manifest. So this is a very real question that I put on the table. What do you desire and why? And who's it for? Is it just for you and your family? And are the motives about safety? Or do you desire things that throw you out of balance in relationship to the world? Like you desire, to be a billionaire who has the massive yacht,
right, and
the 20 homes around the world, and you desire that, and you're wanting to manifest that. Why? What So there's a lot of questions about, like you were saying earlier, what you desire, which is connected to a wound. So it's really important to know that. So understanding that there are consequences, there are these invisible spiritual realms that manifestation belongs to. So it's important that you understand the influences that are playing out there, and that what you think and what you feel and the sources of your motives, your will, are not invisible in those realms. They are very much visible.
Okay, so some of our listeners might be holding this question of,
right.
Okay, I see how my inner world's important. I see how I need to outgrow my, dysfunctional ways of being or thinking
right.
or feeling. And that, might lead me to the world meeting me in a new way. Like, okay, I'm with you. Mm-hmm. But what about all of these outer circumstances that I don't have any control over? What about the economy? What about, the realities of our political landscape?
Right.
It's easy to fall into, believing that we are a victim of circumstances.
Yeah. And not only that, but everything is all at once, right? Something's going on in your economic reality, something's going on in your relationships, something's going on with your landlady, something's going on at your kid's school, and it's like all at once.
Yeah.
And how can, it's like, it's not really fair for us to say it's all on you, or whatever however you might be interpreting what we're saying, but we're not saying it's your fault. So let's just get really clear. You are not to blame, but no one is to blame, right? So no one is to blame here. Because that blaming is not helpful to anyone. And fault finding, unfortunately, is also not helpful.
Yeah.
Whether it's you finding fault with yourself or finding fault with the world for you being in the circumstances that you're in. So the question, especially if you're a little bit in crisis, isn't, okay, well, what caused this? The question is, how are you gonna find your way out?
Right.
And this is definitely connected to manifesting. You have to grow out of what got you here. What got you here isn't going to get you out of it. So in Magenta, we also call these entanglements, and we also call them checkmates. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of what we do is about how to untangle from these crazy entanglements that we can find ourselves in.
And it's up to each of us to outgrow these entanglements in our own lives, and then the system changes. It's not the other way around. We can't wait around for the politics to change, and then our life is going to change.
Yeah, that's not the
we
solution.
have to untangle, and then the world mirrors that. What people are tolerating, what people are accepting, what lives in our consciousness as a people is what gets reflected in the larger consciousness.
Yeah, and the world is more fungible than we realize. We get so fixated on what we believe and what we conclude, but the world is more fungible than that.
Yeah.
So the goal here is to get you out of your thinking and stuckness and into seeing new possibilities that you couldn't see so long as you were stuck and addicted to what you believe and what you feel and your typical strategies, because they're not working.
Right.
But the way out is this inner development, spiritual development path.
Yes.
And what happens is, instead of So with the story of the Gordian knot, it couldn't be solved on one dimension, but on the other dimension, one end was pulled and the whole thing unraveled. And so the picture here is that as you change how you think and what you feel and what you do, the strategies that you're employing that are simply not working and probably getting you the opposite of what you need, as those things change and shift and you grow out of certain addictions and stuck patterns that you've been stuck in, then the problems go away of themselves. It's kind of magical and really cool.
Yeah, I want to say that pursuing your purpose, pursuing your meaningful work that part of you longs to do, maybe you're doubting whether it's practical, whether it's viable. This work is going against the grain of our society, of our culture and where we are right now, of this culture that we are living in that we know, so many of us know is unhealthy.
Right.
But we can't wait for the culture to change and then we'll start living a healthy life. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So we each have to go against the grain and forge a new way. And it's not easy, but it will be meaningful. And we're not saying that, oh, you just heal your thinking and your feeling and you find inner peace and then your life is just going to be easy and you're not going to have to work very hard anymore.
Unfortunately not.
No, but it can be devoid of all of your triggers, of your meltdowns about it or your,
dramas.
pity parties about it.
Yeah.
So you can take on the very hard work, day after day and finding your way forward in a way that, meets your needs and is practical and, doesn't have you all panties in a bunch,
Yeah. So going against the grain is hard to do because what you're doing is you're not continuing status quo.
Yeah.
And when you don't continue status quo, there's more resistance in the world against what you're trying to do. Let's just be honest about this.
Yes.
So activating and being on the path and being dedicated to like finding and then pursuing your true purpose, is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
But we all have to do it.
Yeah, the status quo is easy, but how many people are living their status quo lives in quiet desperation?
Right,
It's
exactly.
soul-crushing jobs because that is the easy path to, financial stability and success as it's defined in our culture.
Right. But that's less and less being true.
Yeah.
That the status quo is going to give you financial security because unfortunately that's less and less the case.
Yeah.
Americans have never had so much debt, credit card debt as they have now.
Yeah.
And inflation is crazy.
Yeah. So we really need everybody to be going against the grain.
Basically.
Yeah, but we need to empower ourselves to go against the grain. You have to start with yourself. You can't wait for someone else to go against the grain and, then it's going to be easy for you. It's going to take a collective effort, but we only are in charge of ourselves.
So going against the grain, by that we really mean that you take your inner work, your inner life in hand, that you realize that your attention is mostly focused outward, and that's understandable. We all do this. But the more you cultivate and nourish your inner life, and the more you invest in it, the more it will grow and become a source of... It's almost like instead of being constantly dependent upon the outer world and you're responding to the outer world, that begins to change. Your priorities begin to change, and instead of you're less knocked about by the stuff that's going on in your outer life, and you have more inner agency about how you're going to respond to it.
So you're still going about your duties in your regular practical physical life. So your work should never be, your inner work shouldn't be interfering with your regular duties of making your meals, feeding your children, taking care of the, watering your plants, taking care of the things that need to get done.
Yeah.
But when you take up the important inner work and see it as essential and invest in it, then those, the practical steps of finding your meaningful work, your purpose, where are you supposed to be making a contribution in this world can be done very clearly and powerfully.
Yeah. Yeah. So manifestation becomes a different game than what we typically read about in books like The Answer and other places. Because it really is an inner game, not about deliberately trying to pull into your life the things you desire, whatever they might be, like some kind of the world is an amoral place, but that you actually you make your outer world reflective of your inner world. Mm-hmm. And so what you're doing is you are embodying, you could say, gratitude. And when you're embodying gratitude because you believe you have things to be grateful for and you feel grateful for them, you start to see more things that you couldn't see before. You're actually growing these organs of perception to be able to see subtle opportunities that you couldn't see before. And so this is hard to do when the world is so incredibly noisy. And sometimes I think the world is this noisy, like the bureaucracy is this odorous, to simply keep us distracted from cultivating our higher self and this beautiful connection that we can grow, and from being able to be empowered human beings. Because an empowered human being is not a controllable human being. Yeah. You become more independent of mind and heart and spirit, which means you're not so easily gaslit or manipulated, either by people in your family or your friends or your workplace or your government, right? Or any government, right? Yeah. And this is a problem. This is a problem for the accumulation and centralization of power and money and wealth. So your emancipation is hard because of what's stacked against you. That's constantly, super consciously trying to distract you from this work. Mm-hmm. That's why it's going against the grain. There's a lot of motives and forces out there who don't want you to be awake. And I don't necessarily call them human, though, the humans designed these darn bureaucracy. I'm fighting with bureaucracy at the moment, can you tell? Specifically around health insurance. So, these forces are very real, but again, they're invisible. They're impulses and influences that come in from the periphery. They are of a spiritual nature, but they are not our friend, and they wish to prevent us from being awake, from being free. Just as there is spiritual realities made of truth and beauty and goodness, so are there spiritual realities that are not. And this is this beautiful, messy world that we live in. And the only way through is to be awake in your thinking, awake in your feeling, and awake to your motives in your will. And to understand that if you look out in the world, you will find evidence for this, what I'm saying, which is that the world is a moral universe, folks. And this is, the more we are aligned, and this is related to manifesting, the more we are aligned with that truth about the moral structure of the universe, the more we can actually manifest things. But it's a funny world. It's not like you're going to then be able to manifest your greed, right? Because that is not a moral force in the world. Yeah. Okay, this is a chaotic force in the world. But if you want to connect to your true purpose, because I do believe that you came here with a purpose, and only you can discover what that is. And the amazing thing is that the more aligned you are with that, whatever it is, and it blows my mind when I hear stories from others about, how they see what their purpose is. And you can hear the ring of truth in what they're saying. You just feel it in your gut. And you're like, damn, that's so different from mine. It's like I could never have, truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah. They know it's their purpose and they're here to accomplish it. And by golly, they're going to do it. And that, even though it's tough, even though the world is not going to make it easy for you, there's a part of you that can align with the moral aspect of the universe, and that aspect of the universe will move with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to learn how to build those organs of perception so that you can see more and more clearly and have that dialogue. You can hear what the universe has to say about, okay, I want to do it this way. Well, there's a little bit of a, egoic thing right over there about wanting to be recognized. Oh yeah, right. Okay. I need to deal with that because that's a thing and it's going to muddy the waters. So I need to focus on that and readjust my motives and readjust my picture and readjust my plan. And now I can go forward knowing that, you know what I'm saying? That's the
now
picture.
And then there's new pictures and there's new opportunities to arrive on the other side of that.
Yes.
Okay, let's just do a quick recap of what we covered today in our first episode of The
Season
Art of
3.
Spiritual Development. That's
Yay.
right. So we started by talking about healing, why healing is essential to our connecting to our purpose and deepening into our purpose, and why healing and inner development is a spiritual act, because we're working with spiritual activities. Then we talked about our inner world shaping our outer world. First through attention, what we're attending to, basically the lens that we have about the world, that is colored by our beliefs, our thoughts, everything that's living inside of us. That world mirrors that back to us. Then we got into the importance of moral development when it comes to spiritual development and when it comes to living our purpose.
Because we really have to realize that we've got to purify our motives. We've got to have agency over what we think and what we feel. These are really, really important because...
And why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, because what happens is we can attune. We can attune to the world and what it has to teach us. And it has a lot to teach us, not only about our nature and our inner nature specifically, but also about the moral arc of the universe.
Yes, but if our inner world is clouded with the chaos of craving, selfish greed, lies, all of these moral deficits, then we don't have the capacity to be able to hear or learn.
Yeah, we don't have the sensitivity because these subtle organs of perception that we can grow through moral integrity and striving for moral integrity actually grows these wonderful, beautiful organs of perception. In other spiritual traditions, they're called chakras. And the chakras, often people think that they're just related to the physical body, but actually they're related to this very important, in a way, almost like an open secret of moral development.
Yeah.
That is how you develop you can develop your chakras in very wrong ways. For sure, you can create a distorted development. The only safe and right way to do it is when you understand the importance of this moral development.
Right. And then we got into some of the practical application of this. How does this actually look in the world? And how do we take into account everything that we're up against when we have meaningful contribution that we want to make in a world that we may see as not valuing that, that we see so much that we're up against, which is true. We are up against a lot, economically, politically,
socially.
We're not saying that it's easy, but it is possible to do it and to have the inner strength to do it without becoming a mess.
Yes.
And through that, step boldly and courageously into your work that is of service, that is making a contribution to a world in need, because the world needs each person to come together, and through each of us going against the grain, that's how the grain changes.
No, the analogy still stands. Yes. Yeah. We can't do this alone. We can only do this collectively.
Yeah.
But only if we are individual. Is this what's so fascinating? Because it never is about the individual pitted against the collective or the vice versa. This is a false dichotomy. It really is that each of us individually becoming stronger and clearer and more individualized and connecting to our purpose. And then we come together as a collective. We're so much stronger when each of us, has that kind of individuation happening through their spiritual development. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So we have a really great practice right now on our website that's free. It's called How to Do Soul Work. It's a 5-day challenge. It is not for the faint of heart, but it's powerful.
Yeah. We promise it's powerful.
And
exercise.
It gives you a taste of this healing work that can, this work of spiritual development, working on our soul, that can lead us to our purpose or, lead us to fulfilling our purpose in new, ways that we didn't even think were possible before.
Yeah. And first comes emancipation, which is another way of saying healing. So we highly recommend that. And also sign up for our email list. If you're not up for How to Do Soul Work, just get your email on our list. We have a bunch of free stuff coming out very soon. So we just want to give you a heads up that that's coming, and you will only see it or get it if you are on our email list.
That's right. And we will see you next time.
See you next time.